Hello, everyone. Hello, Ollie.
Hi, Marcos. Good to see you again.
Likewise, likewise. Yes. So, did you
So,
have a question?
yeah, well, this is a question that often comes up for people, and it is a perennial question, I think, and I don't suppose there's any one answer to it, but I think it'd be useful to quickly discuss it. Yeah, and it's to do with essential dignities of planets, and particularly which term or triplicity they are in, because I'm sure there's more than this, but there's three different terms that schemes, schemata, we call them that
Yes.
can be used. Well, two terms basically. There's the Egyptian and Ptolemaic terms, and there's also for triplicities, there's Ptolemaic, Lilies, and Dorothean. And we've been asked, well, I've been asked several times, and I
No,
asked
we
myself
we
back in the
both have,
day.
I think. Yeah.
Which one should I use? I mean, obviously, this can make a big difference if um, a planet has no dignity except its triplicity or its term, and then doesn't in one of the other schemes. It obviously is peregrine, which is a major disability. So
Mm.
this can make a big difference to whether a planet, the how much power a planet has in a chart. So,
Yeah.
Marcos, what's your
Well,
take on it? What?
okay. Well, I was going to say just briefly. Let's briefly just define what we're talking about for
Okay,
any
good
just
idea.
very, very briefly. This is what we're talking about. A topic called essential dignities, which is just how comfortable a planet feels in any particular bit of the zodiac symbolically in astrology, and it's a way of describing how that planet is operating. So you've got a range of different essential dignities. The big ones being domicile, if a planet's in its own sign or not, exaltation. There's a sign where most planets feel super, like, they're raised up. And then you've got these three more minor dignities. You've got
Yeah.
one called triplicity, which is can be taken like the planet's getting allies and supporters and is sort of in its element a bit. It's not quite as strong as domicile or exaltation. Then you've got term, where the planet has a little bit of power in a little bit of a sign. It's just got a bit of administrative power there. And then you've got face or decan or decan. Term is also sometimes known as bound. And then there's face or decan or decan, which is every sign is divided into three sections. And a planet can be, if it's in a section which it owns, then it has a little bit of special skill. So that it's kind of like a sliding scale of power and eminence, and kind of each essential dignity gives different things. So what Ollie's just described is that for two of those, actually for three, but we're not going to talk about the decans or decans in
Let's
this
not
because
talk about
that's just be a bridge too far. But for at least two of those, there are competing sets
yes.
of schemata. So for like the terms or bounds, you've got the two main sets tables, which is the so-called Egyptian terms or bounds and then the Ptolemaic terms or bounds,
Yes.
and they overlap about 60%, and then there's about 40% disagreement. And then you've got the triplicities, you've got the so-called Dorothean triplicity rulers and the, would it be Ptolemaic triplicity rulers? It's Dorothean versus Ptolemaic, I think.
What's the where I know where the Ptolemy was a famous
Tetrabiblos, yeah,
last he wrote a famous book. He was from Alexandria in ancient Egypt, and he wrote
correct.
a book, basically his summary of astrology and everything. And there's a big argument actually whether he was an astrologer or was just like putting it all together.
Yeah.
But anyway, nobody knows. He's not around to ask. And he basically said, this is how it's done, bang. And so there's a certain amount of this is a textbook answers. That's what Ptolemaic tables are.
Mm.
Egyptian tables are basically the ones the Egyptians used, I believe.
Yes, and but Dorotheus compiled them in his
Dorotheus,
Carmen
yeah.
Carmen Astrological, Dorotheus of Sidon. So he's an earlier. He predates Ptolemy. Actually, it's the
Right, and that,
oldest extant astrological text we've got. I mean, there are earlier fragments, but
right.
and I think Valens maybe. I don't. I'm not 100% sure on these dates. So, but I think certainly Carmen Astrologicum, or the Song of Astrology by Dorotheus of Sidon, is one of the earliest texts. Let's leave it there because I need to check the dates.
Okay, and
And
he
that
had
in that, yes, he
yeah,
puts the Egyptian triplicity rulers in there and the Egyptian terms as well. So Ptolemy came along a little bit later, about a century later, I think. And
Right.
Ptolemy may have slightly reinvented the wheel because he was trying to sort of scientifically update astrology, not the first nor the last time that will be done, in accordance with what he understood to be the principles of the Greek physics, Aristotelian physics.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
sort of tidied shiz up a little bit and used his own schemata. So that's why we've got these competing
Right.
schemes. And we won't go into the decans or faces in this one because they're
No,
super
let's
interesting.
not.
That's a whole other separate thing. So, I mean, I'm going to bat it back to you first, Ollie. What do you, in terms of, so with those triplicities and terms or bounds, do you have any preference for either
Well,
and why?
okay. With my triplicities, which I'll start first, I
Hmm.
use Lily's ones because that's where I learned my traditional astrology one from.
Okay.
Addition, in back in the day, and I didn't know there were any other triplicities at that point, so I just
Okay.
used Lily's. So when I lived in wonderful ignorance and didn't have to worry about this sort of thing. Um, Now, which does Lily use? Does he use Ptolemaic or Egyptian?
He used Ptolemy's. He uses Ptolemy's for both. So
I
he
use
uses Ptolemaic
Ptolemaic
terms. Yeah.
terms for the same reason.
Okay, fine. Now that's very clear. That's very, very clear. I funnily enough, I tend to go with the Egyptian or Dorothean. But with the terms, there's nuance. I actually use, and this is really messy and will upset most astrologers who watch this, I'm sure, but won't be the first time I've upset people. I use both sets of terms. So when I'm using the terms, if there's a disagreement or disparity between the term rulerships, I go, fine. I will literally look at both. I'll take them because I've not seen any convincing argument that's made me certain that one or the other of those is
So
right.
if a planet at least has what one is in
Yeah.
turn, one is you'll say
Yes.
it's in turn.
Yeah. I'll give it a term dignity. I'll say, yeah, fine. That's got some
Okay.
term dignity. And it leads to some interesting things. So say in my birth chart, my ascendant is in one system. In the Egyptian system, it's in terms of Mercury. And in the Ptolemaic system, it's in terms of Venus. Well, in the Mercury thing, they say, oh, if your ascendant's in the terms of Mercury, you're more likely to be a bit scholarly and a bit chatty and a little bit glib. Well, hello. And in the Venus terms, you're more likely to be a bit flirty and you'd be quite attractive. I'm like, well, I'll take that. So like I think, yeah, but you can go both ways. And then my ruling planet Mars is in one system in the term of Venus again, and in the other in the term of Saturn. And they say, well,
Right.
Mars in the term of Venus can make you quite attractive and maybe a little bit light of love. Well, also probably hello. And then the Mars in terms of Saturn says can make you quite lazy. I would say a bit prone to depression. And that's both of those things could potentially be true as well. So
Okay, how interesting. Right.
I see it that way. So the terms are, but that's really because I don't feel I have enough data,
Right.
information, empirical experience with both of those systems over years to really say definitely this or definitely that. I think they can both work. Not so with the triplicities. With the
Uh-huh.
triplicities, I go for the Egyptian or Dorotheic thing because I think they make much more sense than Ptolemy's reinvention of the wheel, primarily because what Ptolemy did, and this makes absolutely no sense to me, was he made Mars the triplicity ruler of the water signs by day and night. By
Yeah, I know.
day and night. And that violates all the terms of sect. Like Mars is given the sect rulership of water sign of like a sect rulership of the night. Mars is made a night chart planet because it's you need to cool down Mars and moisten Mars to make him less
Right.
problematic.
Yeah.
So like that would totally make sense that you give Mars the nighttime rulership of water. You wouldn't
Yes.
also give Mars the daytime rulership of water. That's
No.
ludicrous because that's contrary to sect. And there's a big overlap between the logic of the essential dignity of triplicity and the
Yeah.
logic of sect in traditional astrology.
Right.
So,
Right.
so, so, like for the fact that, for example, Saturn is given the daytime rulership of the air signs in both
Right.
triplicity systems. That totally makes sense because Saturn is cold and dry. And in order for Saturn to make friends and influence people, he has to be warmed up and moistened a little bit because Saturn is
Right.
by
Yeah.
nature essentially too cold and too dry.
Yeah.
So you give him the rulership of the warm and moist air signs during the day. Ding, ding, ding. Great.
Ding, ding, ding.
The
Right.
other
Right.
malefic, therefore, by logical extension, should be given the rulership of the water signs at night, not during the freaking day when he's out of sect and all kinds of problematic. You know, Mars isn't particularly, think about being in Cancer. Like in Cancer, Mars is in its fall. So yeah, Mars enjoys being in Scorpio a lot, is kind of indifferent to Pisces and hates being in Cancer. But if you've got a Mars in Cancer, you're not going to tell me that he's going to have like all kinds of comfortable stuff going on in the day, in a day chart. You know, he's too anyway. So it there's this that sticks out like a sore thumb to me. So what the main difference in Dorothean triplicities is that what Dorothean triplicities have is that Venus is the daytime ruler of water signs and Mars is the nighttime ruler of water signs. That does produce this situation where Venus by day is the triplicity ruler of both earth and water signs.
Yeah.
But I think that makes more sense to me than having Mars ruling water signs during the day. Do you know what I mean? So it's a that is just, if I look at the logic of sect and of triplicity, the older Dorothean schema makes more sense to me. And I think Ptolemy was having a brain fart when he kind of decided to make Mars the daytime ruler of water signs, probably because it bothered him that Venus ruled water signs by day and night. But I think the reason that Dorotheus and the older Egyptian astrologers had that Venus, because Venus is temperately cool and moist. She's temperately cool and temperately moist, so she can handle that in the daytime for both of them. And of course, the moon is the participating triplicity ruler of all the water signs at all times, which you'd expect. So anyway, so this may be a bit esoteric for many of our viewers, but for those of you who do know a bit about essential dignities, this is a question that comes up again and again. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think I would, if somebody wants to use the Ptolemaic dignities, you can absolutely go ahead and do so. It's not going to cause me to have a conniption. It's not something I will, get particularly exercised about. But for myself, I find in terms of the triplicities, when I thought about it, just over a period of time, the Egyptian ones make a lot more sense to me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, probably far more than everybody wanted to know about that. So,
yes, probably.
Basically, as I said at the beginning, there is no real answer. So play around, do what you like, and but that's the reasoning behind it. So it's always useful to know the whys.
Yeah, and as we always say, astrology is a divinatory art. It is not an objective science. So with all of this stuff, you can literally, as long as you know the whys behind your use of the symbolism and you're following some kind of traditional structure, you can come to your own conclusions. Just don't reinvent the wheel unnecessarily, I'd say.
Absolutely not. Okay, brilliant.
All right, thanks, Olly. And thank you, everyone. If you've enjoyed this, please like it, share it, do all the things. And if you didn't know what the hell we were talking about and really want to learn, please check our course out. It's linked below. Okay, brilliant. See you all next time. All right. See you, Olly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.